Hello and welcome to a new episode of our program Inside Egypt, where we bring you the latest political, economic and cultural events that are taking place across Egypt. I'm Yasmin Bakir. Stay tuned right after the break. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stressed that the political and economic reform policies will continue. This came in an article the president wrote on the Daily News Egypt on the occasion of Egypt hosting the Euromoney annual conference, which started on Monday. In the article, the president reviewed his vision for the future of the Egyptian economy and the targets to be achieved by the government.
Policies will continue. This was part of an article the president wrote in the Daily News Egypt, in which he reviewed future plans for the country's economy. The president noted that last year Egypt embarked upon a process of political, social and economic renewal. The first step was to put the country's political life back in order by holding a new constitutional referendum and conducting presidential elections. The successful completion of the two critical political markers was instrumental in restoring confidence in the Egyptian state and its institutions. The next political milestone will be the parliamentary elections, which will be held by the end of the year. On the economic front, the president wrote that Egypt faced an acute internal crisis during the political transition. The government budget deficit ballooned into double digits, foreign exchange reserves shrank, inflation soared, many businesses struggled or were forced to close their doors, many people fell below the poverty line, and the number of the unemployment grew. The president said that to get the economy back on track and to alleviate the suffering of the Egyptian people, it was vitally important for the government to come up with a credible and effective plan. The plan included the implementation of a comprehensive and far-reaching package of policies, programs and projects. According to the president, those included the new Suez Canal project, which was completed on time and in a record period of 1 year. The construction of new roads in the past year to expand national road network and facilitate internal transportation and trade. Starting work in an ambitious plan to reclaim 1.5 million fidans to increase agricultural output and enhance food security. Other infrastructure projects and reforms are addressing Egypt's long unmet needs in water supply, sanitation, port and trail transport, hospitals and schools. A strong start to fiscal consolidation started in fiscal year 2014-15, under which amendments to the tax code were introduced and the government moved ahead with bold energy subsidy reforms and initiated measures to control the public sector wage bill.
The annual Euromoney conference taking place in Cairo concludes on Tuesday. The event is the 20th anniversary of its convention, with the attendance of a large number of representatives of world-leading companies and financial institutions. The conference was inaugurated by the Ministers of Finance and Investment on Monday. This two-day conference was held under the theme Financing the Future and focuses on the financing of the planned projects. Now TV's Linda Abdel Latif has more in the following report.
Sidelines of the 20th anniversary of the Euromoney Egypt conference. I'm being joined right now by Mrs. Victoria Ben, who's the director of Middle East for Euromoney conferences. Mrs. Victoria, thank you so much for being with us today on Now TV International.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here.
Could you please give us like an introduction on this year's conference?
Yeah, this is, as you said, this is our 20th anniversary Euromoney Egypt conference, and it's an important year. So the theme of the conference this year is financing the future. So how to mobilize capital to revitalize Egypt's economy.
The opening session of the conference included conversations with ministers of finance and investment, besides conversations as well with representatives of world-leading companies and financial institutions. During the session, Minister of Finance, Dr. Hani Adri Demien, said that Egypt is looking forward to more economic growth, especially with the latest economic events that Egypt has witnessed recently.
We are inspired with the reforms that we have done. We're inspired with the successes we have achieved on the political stance, on the economic stance, and we are going to continue.
The conference also consisted of a number of workshops covering a wide variety of topics. The workshops included discussions on the Suez Canal corridor, as well as the Egyptian energy and electricity sector.
We started by market testing in different areas, and also we started with a project management plan to see when and what this will be done. We started with the two ports, East Port Said Port and Sukna Port, and it is running now. And we're expecting infrastructure for the major industrial area to be in place in a time of 18 months. And I think now is the time to start approaching investors everywhere. The energy mix in Egypt will be 60% thermal, 20% renewable, 20% coal-fired plants. We have in the pipeline the 20% coal-fired plants. We have in the pipeline the 20% solar and wind. And also we have more than 60% by the plan of 14,100 megawatt. With the global market, it has to do with our relations, the trading relations with specific markets like Asia.
Egypt is attractive because of the size of the population and because the government seems to be following the right economic policies, particularly on reform. You've seen an increase in foreign investment into the power sector, and that is partly because of the reforms, it's partly because of the demand for electricity in Egypt, but yes, I think those reforms have been very worthwhile.
The other workshops also included discussions on real estate, construction and housing, besides the topic of financial inclusion. Linda Abdelatif, Nile TV International.
The army announced on Tuesday that its operations in Sinai Peninsula in cooperation with the anti-terrorism forces in the Interior Ministry continued. The General Command announced that it had launched a major military operation against terrorists in Sinai Peninsula, killing 29 militants and leaving an officer and a soldier dead. The army statement said that the units of the police and the army launched Operation Right of the Martyr at dawn to eliminate terrorist elements in Rafah, Sheikh Zuwayed and Al-Arish in North Sinai. The High Elections Committee announced that it received candidacy papers from 137 parliamentary hopefuls on Monday, and it said that the number of candidates who applied in the upcoming parliamentary elections have reached 4,273. The committee announced that the parliamentary elections will kick off on October 17th, and more details on the preparations for the upcoming parliamentary elections in the following report.
The committee announced extending the scheduled registration period of parliamentary hopefuls for 3 days in order to allow candidates to retake their medical tests in accordance to a court ruling. 2 court decisions have been issued on Monday highlighting violations of parliamentary electoral laws. One ruling issued by the Administrative Court stated that a decision by the Higher Elections Committee to accept candidates' medical checkups conducted in February was a violation of the House of Representatives law. Elections were originally planned to take place in March and April, and candidate registration was accordingly begun. But the Supreme Constitutional Court ruled that the electoral constituency law was unconstitutional, bringing preparations to a halt. The law was subsequently amended, and last month it was announced that the election would take place over several phases from the 17th of October to the 2nd of December. The Elections Committee announced last week that the would-be candidates who had previously passed the required medical checkups in February did not need to take the medical tests again when they resubmit their applications to stand for elections. The committee added that the decision aims at making the electoral process easier for prospective candidates. Following the ruling, however, the committee announced extending the scheduled registration period originally scheduled to close on the 12th of September for 3 days in order to allow candidates to retake their medical tests. On Monday, the Administrative Court also accepted a lawsuit filed by a lawyer against the change of the boundaries of 2 electoral constituencies, one in Cairo and one in the Upper Egyptian Governorate of Qina. Meanwhile, the committee announced that at least 4,136 parliamentary hopefuls have submitted their papers to register as candidates since the registration period began last week. According to the statement, 230 out of the aspiring candidates were women. The committee added that political parties and coalitions have not yet submitted their candidate lists. Egypt's parliament will be made up of 596 members, 448 elected as independents and 120 from party-based lists. The remaining 28 seats will be filled by presidential appointees. The first stage of parliamentary elections is set to begin on the 17th of October. Egypt has around 55 million registered voters.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry met the current president of the African Export-Import Bank and the upcoming new president of the bank, who's due to hold position this month. Now TV's Linda Abdul-Latif conducted the following interviews with the current and the upcoming president.
This visit to introduce my successor to His Excellency the Ambassador, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and also to brief him on where the bank stands today. One important item which came up was the issue of providing a $500 million facility for the Egyptian exporters. As you know, Egypt is trying to develop its intra-African trade and the South-South trade. So I took the opportunity of this meeting to also brief His Excellency on how much the Egyptian companies are appreciating this facility, because since it was signed some 4 months ago, we now have about almost 3/4 of the facilities that are being used. So we are looking at increasing the amount from $500 million, which was approved originally, to very soon $1 billion. This facility helps companies to develop their trade with other African countries.
My focus as I come in as president is actually to promote intra-African trade. Intra-African trade is a major driver of development, because I believe that by promoting intra-African trade, we will also promote value-added exports, because intra-African trade is largely driven by light manufacturers. So if we support it, we are going to support the creation of the capacity to manufacture for export within our continent. We can no longer continue to allow others to take advantage of the growth we see in Africa. We Africans also have to take advantage of that growth.
Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab assigned Minister of Irrigation and Water Resources Dr. Hussam Moghazi to take charge of the Ministry of Agriculture until a new minister is appointed. The decision came. Administrative Supervisory Authority arrested Minister of Agriculture minutes after he submitted his resignation. Minister Salah Hilal was arrested Monday after being told to step aside in connection with an investigation into corruption. The prosecution ordered that Hilal be kept in detention pending investigation into a major case of corruption in his ministry. The prosecution services last week banned media from publishing any information about the case. Minister of Irrigation Hussam Moghazi said Egypt will hold emergency talks with Sudan and Ethiopia over means of saving negotiations over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And Moghazi said the talks aim to unite viewpoints to discuss available options to achieve the interests of all three countries. The talks come after the deadline laid to receive technical studies over the impact of the dam passed.
Mr. Hussam Moghazi expressed Egypt's concern about the failure of foreign consultancy firms to submit reports on the impact of the Renaissance Dam. Two foreign consultancy firms, French and Dutch, were supposed to reach an agreement and deliver the report on the 5th of September to a three-way committee of representatives and experts from Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan. The missed deadline last August, forcing the committee to schedule the new deadline. The three countries had agreed to give 70% of the research workload to the French consultancy firm, with the Dutch firm getting the rest. It is not clear why the firms did not deliver the reports to the committee on time. However, Moghazi asserted that Egypt is committed to the Declaration of Principles, which they signed with Sudan and Ethiopia in March 2015, agreeing to safeguard the interests of all three countries. Egypt is expected to discuss the situation with Ethiopia and Sudan to determine the best course of action for the three countries. Egypt has previously voiced concern about its share of the Nile water. According to the Irrigation Ministry, Egypt is suffering from a water deficit of 20 billion cubic meters, which it compensates through water recycling. The Renaissance Dam is scheduled to be completed in 2017, will be Africa's largest hydroelectric power plant, with a storage capacity of 74 billion cubic meters of water.
And now we will have a look at the tourism magazine, which brings us interesting news related to tourists and attractive destinations in Egypt. Abir Mitwali reports.
In a press statement, the Minister of Tourism, Khalid Rami, said that Egypt estimated that its revenues from tourism will increase, reaching $26 billion by 2020. The statement added that 20 million tourists are expected to visit Egypt in 2020. Egypt's tourism sector has seen a relative recovery in the past year. The sector has been making a gradual recovery, with Egypt receiving 9.9 million tourists in 2014, up from 9.5 million in 2013. Earlier, Khalid Rami announced that Egypt welcomed the news that there were 3% more tourists in the first quarter of 2015 than in the same period of the previous year, while hotel reservations for the summer season were up 15% compared to the previous year. The tourism sector, which contributes 3.1% of Egypt's gross domestic product, is one of the country's most important sources of the vital foreign currency. In an effort to overcome bureaucracy, Egypt's Antiquities Minister said that the long-planned Grand Egyptian Museum will have an independent international directorship. Minister Mamdouh al-Damati said the awaited museum near the pyramids of Giza will be run independent of the government, similar to the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, an elaborate piece of architecture which opened in 2002 under a special act of parliament guaranteeing its administrative independence. Former Antiquities Minister and famed Egyptologist Zahi Hawass said the museum must be international because government routine cannot work for museums. He said that private international sponsorship was needed, suggesting that the names of the individual donors be written on the walls of the museum as an incentive. Only the foundation and a few structures of the museum have been built so far. It was originally scheduled to have opened years ago, but was repeatedly delayed over what the government said was lack of funds. The latest official target aims for a 2018 opening. The main achievement so far is the contribution of a new conservation center to restore damaged antiquities, which is already being used to work on artifacts that will eventually be displayed at the museum. Established with Japanese technical assistance and a $300 million loan, the center includes laboratories for resorting, scanning, and studying mummies, as well as artifacts made from pottery, wood, textiles, and glass. Staff also receive training in Japan.
That brings us to the end of our episode of Inside Egypt for today. Thank you very much for watching.